now go to the distinguished ranking member for any questions or comments he may have.
Yeah, no, I'll be brief because we've been through this before. You know, Dr. Foxx, would you agree that we should condemn Republican governors or any governor that sends migrants to a particular location or a particular city or town without coordinating with the local officials as to where they're being sent? That the idea of just dropping people off without telling the people who you're dropping off where they're going, or without notifying local officials so they can accommodate the needs of these immigrants? I mean, some of them are children. Wouldn't you agree that that is something that is that's a bad thing to do?
What I condemn is the fact that the Biden administration is totally lawless. It does absolutely.
So you're not going to answer my question.
No. I'm
well, I mean,
answering
the answer
your
is yes
question.
or no. It's not
The border
complicated.
is totally open, and the governors
Right.
are doing what they can do
So
to
you-
deal with the millions of people coming into this country illegally.
So you think it's okay to take a group of human beings, not tell them where they're going, put them on an airplane, and then drop them off in front of the vice president's house, or on an island off Cape Cod, or in New York City, or in Chicago, that you think that that is an appropriate way to respond to some policy differences that you have with President Biden?
Just to call an open border policy differences? Well, to my understanding, the Biden administration does the same thing. They load people up in the middle of the night on airplanes and drop them off wherever they think they should drop them off. So
Without coordinating with the local officials? You think that's
without
okay?
coordinating with local officials. We've seen
yeah.
episode after episode of that happening on the part of the Biden
So you think this is
administration.
okay?
They have
Okay.
envelopes with them,
Okay.
with papers,
We
to show them what to
yeah,
do.
right. So I mean, I saw what happened to some of these. I learned about what happened, I mean, with the migrants who were dropped off in Massachusetts without any coordination or notice. I mean, luckily, our values are different than the values that are being on display.
Well, I read the other day that there are some people still in Martha's Vineyard, and they're enjoying it very
Yeah, well,
much.
Yeah, well,
They're working, too, illegally.
Yeah. I got to be honest with you, it is offensive to hear you talk in a manner in which you diminish the worth of human beings.
I am not in any way diminishing the
Well, I
worth
think
of
you are
any
when you're-
human
yeah.
being. Mr.
So let me ask you a
McGovern,
question.
I'm a very strong pro-life person.
Yeah.
I believe in treating people with dignity from birth to natural death.
Well,
And
if you think that
people should be treated with
if you
dignity.
think
That's not what the
if you-
Biden
if you
administration is
think-
doing.
If you think that not telling people where they're going and putting them in an airplane and dropping them off without coordinating with local officials so they can be met and properly cared for is treating people with dignity,
Well,
then
you're
you and I have a very
condemning the Biden
you and I have a
administration.
very different opinion of how people should be treated with dignity. Now, I assume that because I've heard you before warn against the federal government basically telling cities and towns how they should run their schools. I mean, I've lost count of how many times over the years we've been in the Rules Committee when I've heard you come up here and say that, you know, the federal government should butt out of decisions involving schools. And yet here, you say that, you know, no, we're going to not only insert ourselves, but we're going to insert ourselves in a way where, let's say you are a public, you're an educational institution that receives any federal money, that we will basically terminate federal support. If you, for example, in this heat wave, were to open up an empty gymnasium where there's no students at school right now, so that people don't die from heat exposure to the heat, that somehow that they're going to be punished for that?
The taxpayers, when you say the word federal money, you're talking about hardworking American taxpayers. You make it sound like it's manna from heaven. It's not fair to ask hardworking American taxpayers to pay to house illegal aliens, and that's what we're talking about.
So where do you,
And that money, and by the way, the Biden administration's very quick, and so was the Obama administration, quick to take away money. If you're not following the rules on school meals, then your money can be taken away from you. There's a lot of hypocrisy here, Mr. McGovern, in telling schools what they can and cannot do.
Well, but that's what you're doing here.
I'm sorry?
You are telling local schools, you're saying the federal government is going to tell you what you can and cannot do.
No, we're just saying we're going to withdraw funds if you break the law.
Okay.
That's the point. It's
all
again,
right,
it's
yeah.
an issue
Oh, I
of who's
see.
following the
Okay.
law, who's not following the law.
Well, some of these are asylum seekers. I mean, some of these people
Then
are.
they should go through the process.
Right, but where, they are going through the process, and where do they, and.
No. They apply for asylum in the country where they are, and then they try to come into the United States. They don't come into the United States first and then apply for asylum. No,
Well,
we're
that's not what the
gonna
current law
support breaking the law.
You can apply for asylum if you come to the, I mean, under current law, you can apply for asylum if you if you present yourself at the border. So that is, I mean, no one's breaking the law right now. You may not like the law, you can change the law. I mean, you can build another, you can go ahead and finish the wall that you were supposed to build that never got built, that was going to cost $1 trillion, whatever. But the current law, these people are not breaking the current law if they're housing people who are fleeing because they have a well-founded fear of persecution. Anyway, whatever. I mean, we went through this before. I mean, I think this is, red meat for the political base. And again, the idea you talk about the safety of kids and not a damn thing about gun violence. And kids are being massacred on a daily basis. But I guess, the political interests outweigh the public safety issues on guns. So with that, I yield back. So let me just make this really concrete for people. I have a pile of books on my desk in my office that I get from the Library of Congress, books that have been banned. And I have more coming every day. Luckily, my Republican friends haven't censored the Library of Congress yet. Maybe that will be next. But let me just read from one of these books. It's called The Life of Rosa Parks by Kathleen Connors. It was pulled from second-grade classrooms in the Duval County Public School District in Florida. So let's just see what is so objectionable. Quiet beginnings. When Rosa Louise McCauley was born in 1913, no one knew she'd make a stand for civil rights. Rosa lived on her grandparents' farm in Alabama. She went to a segregated school where her mother taught. Rosa had to leave school to care for her grandmother and mother when they became ill. But after she married Raymond Parks in 1932, she was able to go back, and Rosa was proud of her high school diploma. Rosa and Raymond believed everyone should be equal. They joined the NAACP in Montgomery, Alabama, hoping to help blacks gain their civil rights. Rosa worked as a secretary for the group. In 1955, Rosa boarded a bus after work in Montgomery. At the time, there was a law that said a black person had to give up their seat if a white person needed it. Rosa refused, and she was arrested. On the day of Rosa's trial, black leaders planned a boycott of all the city buses in Montgomery, Alabama. It was a big statement because many blacks use buses to get around. Rosa was fined, but she wouldn't pay. By 1956, her case had reached the U.S. Supreme Court. It declared Alabama's segregation laws illegal. This decision ended the bus boycott after 381 days. Rosa's troubles weren't over. She lost her job. Some people said they wanted to hurt her. She and her family then moved to Detroit, Michigan in 1957. None of this stopped Rosa from believing in equality. Rosa's continued support of the civil rights movement earned her great praise. In 1996, she was given the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Then Rosa received the Congressional Gold Medal in 1999. Rosa died in 2005. Today, she's often called the mother of the civil rights movement. Rosa's story teaches a very important lesson. Even small actions can have a big impact. So my question for Chairwoman Foxx, it's very simple. It's a yes or no question. Rosa Parks has a statue in National Statuary Hall. She laid an honor here in the rotunda of the United States Capitol building when she died. And so this is a simple, non-controversial children's book about her life. Do you think that this book should be banned? Yes or no?
I have no idea why the book was of controversy in the second grade. It sounds like a perfectly wonderful story to me. I love the story of Rosa Parks, always have loved the story of Rosa Parks because she was a really brave woman, but I have no idea. You're asking me to give you an answer out of context, Mr. McGovern. I have no idea why that book was taken out of the second grade. I don't know reading levels.
Well,
it sounded a little high.
I read the
reading
whole
level for second grade to me. As you read it, that was. Yeah. I thought second graders might not understand every word in there, so I have no idea.
Well, I read the whole book.
I know.
So there was, you know, and I think the concern that many of us have, given what is happening in this country, you know, led by Republican governors and Republican legislatures all over the country, is that somebody just merely raising a question about a book like this. I mean, by the way, books about Martin Luther King, books about Nelson Mandela, they've also been banned. I have a long list that I'd like unanimous consent to insert in the record, Mr. Chairman.
Without objection.
And, you know, and some of the commentary is that some people who object to this don't like the fact that she is referred to as a black woman, that it would be better to simply say she was asked to move to the back of the bus. And so there's all these kind of like ridiculous excuses for books like this to be banned. And the concern is that if this bill passes, and God forbid it ever became law, that it would have a chilling impact on schools and on libraries where they would be afraid that if they didn't comply with all the onerous requirements of your bill, you know, if somehow they, you know, were accused of not following everything perfectly, that they would lose all federal funding for their schools.
Mr. McGovern, there is not a single requirement in this bill dealing with banning of books. So I don't know what you're talking about in terms of the list of onerous requirements on banning books. There's not a single word in here about banning books.
Yeah. Well,
well, first of all, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Well, two things. First of all, I mean, just in answer to my question, yes or no, do you think this book should be banned? And the answer is?
Well, obviously, I don't think the book should be banned. But again, you're taking out of context. I have no idea. You said it's been banned.
It has been banned, and I gave you the in Duval County Public School and district in Florida.
Well, I don't know what that means. So.
Well, that's a district in Florida.
I need more information on what you mean by banning a book.
Have you been following any of the debate on books that are being removed from schools? I mean, you know, there's a book entitled "I Am Martin Luther King" that was banned from some schools. I mean, you're the Education Committee. I mean, are you guys following any of that?
Mr. McGovern, I follow as much information about what's happening in terms of education as I possibly can, but I have not seen anything on that. But your definition of ban is something I don't understand. I don't know what the definition is.
Ranking Member.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, today I rise honoring Women's History Month to once again bring attention to the destructive practice of book banning taking place all across our nation. At this time, I am also going to be joined by my esteemed colleague, Senator Tina Smith from Minnesota. Mr. President, our nation's literature serves as a mirror, a window, and a door to endless possibilities, fueling our imagination, fostering empathy, and challenging us to think critically about our beliefs and values. To many young Americans, opening a book with characters who resemble them and their lived experiences is the very essence of our nation's commitment to freedom of thought. These stories highlight the voices of everyday Americans who often go unheard. Let me put the horrors of these book bans in context. PEN America provides a comprehensive overview of the increase in book bans across U.S. schools during the 2021-22 school year. It reveals a significant rise in instances of censorship, with over 2,500 cases affecting nearly 1,650 unique titles. Most of these bans are driven by organized groups targeting books that explore LGBTQ+ themes and racial issues. Adding on to this, in 2022, the American Library Association documented 1,269 demands to censor library books and resources, marking the highest number of attempted book bans in over 20 years, and nearly doubling the count from 2021. A significant 38% increase was observed in the number of unique titles targeted, and the majority concerning LGBTQIA+ topics or authored by individuals from diverse racial backgrounds. The worst part is that these challenges are increasingly initiated by groups rather than individuals, with a shift towards targeting multiple titles at once. It's the new veneer by which historical revisionists intend to erode the history of our people. I am all but obligated to ensure that all forms of expression remain unrestrained. Just as rivers carve the landscapes of America, literature has the profound capacity to shape the minds and lives of America's youth. These stories flow through their consciousness, eroding old biases, watering seeds of new ideas, and guiding them along the path of self-discovery. In navigating these waters, young people learn to understand and embrace their identities, recognize their place in a larger narrative, and appreciate the diversity of human experience. Literature, in its boundless forms, acts as a river, constantly moving, shaping, and transforming the selfhood of our youth, guiding them towards the vast ocean of their potential. Growing up in rural Mississippi, and as the descendant of sharecroppers, my journey echoes the narratives of resilience and perseverance that are deeply rooted in the American history. And so I found solace reading the words of the great Maya Angelou, one of our nation's quintessential civil rights leaders and one of its most prolific writers. With her profound literary and societal contributions, Angelou left an indelible mark across America. Angelou's voice, particularly through her autobiography, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, offers deep insight into the human condition, advocating for civil rights and female empowerment. Yet proponents of book banning do not believe that her story and her perspective have a place in our national narrative. I Know Why a Caged Bird Sings, this work, it is set against the backdrop of the rural South, providing a poignant exploration of Angelou's own experiences growing up as a Black girl in America during the Great Depression of the 1930s and 1940s. Her words encapsulate the essence of American beauty. And it's not just a triumph, but also the struggles that shape us, guiding our path to becoming who we are meant to be. I Know Why a Caged Bird Sings is a testimony to the human spirit's capacity for resilience, for transformation, and for triumph over adversity, making it a timeless and essential piece of literature. Every child in this nation should have the opportunity to read it if they are truly to understand the history of the United States. In her writing, Maya Angelou offers, quote, "Without willing it, I have gone from being ignorant of being ignorant to being aware of being aware. The worst part of my awareness was that I didn't know what I was aware of. I knew very little, but I was certain that things I had yet to learn wouldn't be taught to me at George Washington High School. I began to cut classes, to walk in Golden Gate Park or wander along the shiny counter of the Emporium department store. When Mother discovered that I was playing truant, she told me that if I didn't want to go to school one day, if there were no tests being held, and if my schoolwork was up to standard, all I had to do was tell her that, and I could stay home. She said she didn't want some white woman calling her up to tell her something about her child she didn't know. And she didn't want to be put in a position of lying to a white woman because I wasn't woman enough to speak up. That put an end to my truancy, but nothing appeared to lighten the long, gloomy day that going to school became. To be left alone on the tightrope of youthful unknowing is to experience the excruciating beauty of full freedom and the threat of external indecision. Few, if any, survive their teens. Most surrender to the vague but murderous pressure of adult conformity. It becomes easier to die and avoid conflicts than to maintain a constant battle with the superior forces of maturity. Until recently, each generation found it more expedient to plead guilty to the charge of being young and ignorant. Easier to take the punishment meted out by the older generation, which had itself confessed to the same crime short years before. The command to grow up at once was more bearable than the faceless horror of unwavering purpose, which was youth. The bright hours when the young rebelled against the descending sun had yet to give way to 24-hour periods called days that were named as well as numbered. The black female is assaulted in her tender years by all those common forces of nature at the same time that she is caught in the American Negro, caught in the tripartite crossfire of masculine prejudice, white illogical hate, and black lack of power. The fact that the American Negro female emerges a formidable character is often met with amazement, distaste, and even belligerence. It is seldom accepted as an inevitable outcome of the struggle won by survivors and deserves respect, if not enthusiastic acceptance, end quote. To those advancing the banning of books, I ask you to pause and reflect on a moment when a book truly spoke to you. Let that memory guide you to understand the power of literature, not just as a mirror of society, but a builder of empathy and understanding across diverse experiences. Consider the richness these narratives bring to our collective understanding and the importance of keeping that diversity accessible for all. Literature, like rivers, carving landscapes, shapes the minds and lives of our youth, guiding them towards self-discovery and empowering them to embrace their identities. Maya Angelou's work exemplifies the resilience and strength of marginalized communities, of the community of Black women, offering profound insights into the human experience. I urge my colleagues to reflect on the transformative power of literature and to join me on the Senate floor to read an excerpt from a banned book that changed their lives, but has since been banned from the lives of others. Thank you, Mr. President. May we continue to strive for a future where every voice is heard and every story is valued. May America read freely. Now I want to turn to my colleague, Senator Smith from Minnesota.
Mr. President.
Oh, of course, the senator from Minnesota.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you so much, Senator Butler. Mr. President, I rise today to speak out about the absurd book bannings that are happening in schools across our country, and I want to thank Senator Butler for inviting me to speak today about this issue. You know, I was reflecting, Senator Butler, as I was listening to you speak in the beginning about what reading meant to me when I was a young person, and I was first understanding what it felt like to be immersed in a book that I loved, that feeling of learning, being able to imagine myself living different lives, being able to think about what different experiences would be like, and understanding that my life was not everybody's life, that there is such diversity of life in this world, and being exposed to that through reading was so exciting to me. And also, as I was seeing how I was not like everybody else, I was also able to see myself in the people that I read about, both my own struggles as well as triumphs in the stories that I read. And that is the gift of reading. And so to think about the absurdity of trying to block that gift from people because of one's own views about what is okay and what is not okay is, I think, what is at issue here. I appreciate very much having the opportunity to read into the record incredible authors whose works have been unfairly banned. And I think it's interesting, colleagues, just last week, the American Library Association released new data documenting how prevalent this is. They are documenting book challenges that are happening throughout the United States and found a huge surge in these challenges, 65% increase in challenges to books just in 2023, the highest level that the ALA has ever recorded. And among the books that were banned last year is a book called And Tango Makes Three. This is a book by Justin Richardson and Peter Parnell. And it's a demonstration of the absurdity of banning books. This book in particular, it's based on the real story of two penguins in the Central Park Zoo who create a family and raise a chick together. Both of these penguins were male, and so a Florida school district banned the book because of their state's Don't Say Gay law. And now I'm going to read a bit of the text because I think it shows so much. Here we go. Children and their parents aren't the only families at the zoo. The animals make families of their own. There are red panda bear families with mothers and fathers and furry red panda bear cubs. There are monkey dads and monkey moms raising noisy monkey babies. There are toad families and toucan families and cotton-top tamarin families too. And in the penguin house, there are penguin families. And every year, at the very same time, the girl penguins start noticing the boy penguins, and the boy penguins start noticing the girls. And when the right girl and the white boy find each other, they become a couple. Two penguins in the penguin house were a bit different. There was one named Roy and the other named Silo. Roy and Silo were both boys, but they did everything together. They bowed to each other. They walked together, they sang to each other, they swam together. They didn't spend much time with the girl penguins, and the girl penguins didn't spend much time with them. Instead, Roy and Silo wound their necks around each other. Their keeper, Mr. Gramsci, noticed these two penguins, and he thought to himself, they must be in love. Now, Mr. President, I have 4 grandchildren, and I think that reading a story like this to them, reading this story to them, is exactly what should be happening. As children, people of all ages really think about what it means to love one another, what it means to be a family, and how we can come together in that idea rather than being driven apart. And I hope and will do everything I can to make sure that my 4 grandchildren live in a future where books that affirm families can come in all different forms and all different shapes and sizes that aren't considered worth banning. Thank you very much, Senator Butler, for organizing this discussion. And with that, Mr. President.